Okay, so have a look at this over here. And where do we start? Description. Basic description. Okay.
It's like a ribbon. It's very it's like graphic design by it's like someone tried to reproduce a certain digital process using these brushes.
This is way before digitization. Way before. But that's interesting.
In the 70s?
Actually, even earlier. Way earlier. I think maybe even the late 50s, 60s. So now I'm a blind person. It's like, I don't know, right? Blind person, talking to a blind person.
It's a kind of band.
So a couple of people have said this. It's like a ribbon, right? Okay, I'm the blind person. Okay, so she's painted a ribbon. But what's the distinctive feature of this ribbon?
It's a torsion. That is a movement, a torsion.
Dance. It's a spider.
It's in a loop. It's one loop.
Yes. So first of all, it's all one piece, and it's double helical. It's helical, but so now we're getting a little bit technical. But more than just helical, I think maybe somebody said it.
It's one color.
I'm trying to get if it is a ribbon.
It's reflected.
It's reflective. But what about how did it get into that shape? It's twisted. It's a twisted ribbon, right? So it's not just a loop, right? It's a loop that's then twisted and then comes back on itself. It's called, by the way, there's a word for this. Anybody know?
It's
not a helical. It's a Mobius strip. Well done. Exactly. Mobius. It's called Moebius, and it's named after I think it's a Danish mathematician. This is actually in mathematics. This is, you get circles and squares and that kind of thing. This is actually a technical thing in mathematics where you can describe this. You can describe it mathematically. Okay.
It looks like the DNA.
DNAs are something like that, exactly. So it relates to the helix. It's a helix with a twist, right? So now, do you still want to say it's dancing?
No. It's moving around. Yes.
There's motion. It's in motion. It's not a block. It's like as if there's emotion in it.
Yes, it's moving.
But it's freezing in time.
But when you say dancing, I'm kind of thinking.
No, like it's just. Like
it's in a very specific.
Yeah, it's flowing.
It's.
Fluid.
I'll come back to you in a second. It's in a very specific order.
Yes.
So it's not freedom. It's not. It does a very specific series of movements, right? And in fact, it's often used as a symbol of infinity, right? But now, what's the weird thing about it as you're looking at it?
It's trapped in the frame.
Exactly, yes.
It's trapped.
First of all, for all of this movement is kind of
Actually,
trapped.
for me, it feels that it's getting out of the frame from above and from below.
It's like it's trying to escape in some ways. Sorry, go ahead. So now, everybody listen up. Say again.
There's some I said that we cannot pinpoint where it begins or ends.
Right? And that's why it becomes a symbol for infinity, right? Has no beginning, has no ending, right? But what's also interesting about it.
I think, Rico, sorry. I think looking at it, I can't help not imagining that there's another one below.
Yes, it's a bit difficult to notice.
Yeah.
It could be, but go ahead.
There is a movement which is frozen. There is a tension. Like, it's a movement.
Yes, but because it's always the same.
Yes.
No matter how much it's moving, it's always the same, right? But.
It's like the glass hour, but instead of sand, there is a light going down.
There is this very clear light, but I want to ask you, there's something else I want to ask you, which is, this point here,
The pinkish?
yeah,
Okay.
is that the inside or the outside?
You can never tell.
You can never tell. It's like
Your eye keeps seeing it in different ways. You can't.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Actually,
That's
Rico,
what's
I
interesting
see the
about this.
reflection of light that is
And,
reflecting on the outer side of the upper one and the inner side of the inner one.
Okay, okay, now, but I'm going to try, follow me on this one, right? Can you see that this here is an outside loop,
Yes.
and in fact this
It's an inside.
Is it inside?
links in with that.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
Over here,
It's under something.
it's the inside, you read it as the inside, whereas over here you read it as the outside. And this is the interesting thing about a Möbius strip. It somehow flips between inside and outside, and you can't pinpoint where. Right? You don't know where the change happens between inside and outside. This is beautifully done, right? But what's brilliant about this, and I have to say, these are highly experimental, right? But what's interesting is the way in which what she's playing with here is, can you feel that ambiguity? There's this ambiguity with all of it, which is when you first look at this, if you look at this line, and then you look at that, for the longest time, I was seeing that as being empty space.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
right? So when you see this, because here you can see that twist, right? So you can see here that it twists over there. So that over there, then that seems to me to be sort of like empty space into the background. But then when you see it coming around here, so it becomes, so this is full, hollow,
Oh, okay.
all right? So what she's done is she's taken a complex shape and she's made it even more ambiguous.
Yeah.
Especially the framing. Like the framing is
I can
she's-
clearly see it.
Yeah.
like the square shape is really hard to manifest because I don't know why, it's like the childish part of me. Like you know when you're putting back the ornament, the Christmas ornament.
Yes,
like in
yes.
this, like usually these are weak points to put in a painting.
Yeah.
But yeah, because it's too technical, it's really well done.
It's incredibly
It's
technically
like,
well
it's
done.
very,
Right.
it's like she's a master.
Yeah, this really is masterful.
What the lady
So
there,
that works.
what's her name? Rula said light. And I'd like to add a piece of information here is that the artist was also experimenting on the reflection of light on several materials.
On different materials and on different forms.
Because the subject is mathematical.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the philosophy of mathematics can
Yes.
be artistic.
Absolutely. That's exactly what she's getting at, right? This is what transforms this from a mathematical diagram into this kind of artistic exploration of, and again, I have to say, of these kind of presence and voids, right? And you're not quite sure. At one moment it's a void, at another moment it's a
visual illusion.
It's like an illusion, except it's not.
Beautiful one.
It's true. You can actually do that with a piece of paper, right? So it looks like a visual illusion, and there's plenty of illusion. I always found it, as I was trying to say, so the part that I read most easily in this is I read this over here, right? But then somehow there's this other continuity that kind of throws me off, and it's like, oh, so that's so that must be a thing there, right? And you can't sit still, right? As you're following it around, and it sort of resolves, then it unresolves itself.
Because math is we don't know if it's an illusion or it is a reality.
Oh, yes.
Somewhere it's in the
It's somewhere in the middle. Yeah,
It's an abstraction.
nicely said. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, please.
I think why we're not being able to discern,
Yeah.
we're getting confused here, it's because when it's turning, and then it's doing this,
Yes.
there should be a crossing point here, so it goes behind.
Yes, which is sort of, yes.
Yeah, but because the
Yes.
light is hitting it here, so there's no difference of shade.
Nicely said, yes.
Don't say that it's...
So that's the ambiguity here, where this looks like, is that the same thing or is that different from? Right? Exactly, as it kind of turns across here, you expect that this to be more different to that over there, precisely because she's kind of put that pink stroke across. So you read that as being together, whereas in fact they're different layers. This one is even more complex, and it's more difficult to make as an object, right? Because if you look at it, now I'm just trying to work this out, right? So what you can see is
it's more into the sculpture of
this here.
It's more. It looks like more the sculpture.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So this turns and then goes into the inside. So this is this continuation of that over there, right? But it's honestly, it's very difficult to make out. I will say this is my reference. If any of you have ever been, to the Guggenheim Museum in New York, those spirals, it looks a little, it has that kind of feeling to it as you're looking up and seeing these kind of spirals interacting with each other. I have huge admiration for these paintings, right? But interestingly enough, and this we can say, they're not necessarily philosophical in the same way that those are philosophical, right? So that's what made you say experimental. She's kind of experimenting with form and illusion and kind of optical illusion, in a sense, and light.
Actually,
and how that
it's kind
operates.
of an intellectual game.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. But it's brilliantly done, I have to say. It's really extraordinarily done.
Those were created in 1960.
Which is very advanced.
Which is very early. She was a real pioneer, absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
And I'll tell you who the artist is if you kind of just tell me what you see over there in this one.
Trees and lemon and orange field.
The food. What did you say?
Lemon and orange.
Okay. And what else?
And
bird feathers falling down.
Feathers.
Feathers falling down.
The blue ones.
And glass, like want to shatter.
Not on the
What about the angular shape?
So what about...
It's like the reflection.
Like barriers, like something like...
It's just like you're looking up.
It's like you're looking up at buildings from underneath. You're looking up at...
If you were an ant walking and you're looking into that, what would you see?
The tree.
The tree,
Yeah,
And
but
The
it's a
reflection
tree,
of the sun on the leaves.
and it's a tree in between...
what?
Two places.
We were just saying it.
Yep.
Yes. It's like two streets, like two buildings. Right? Can you see? It's like... It's the New York theme, right? It's like you can imagine looking up at these kind of tall skyscrapers over here.
It's like New York meeting in California.
Actually, it is New York.
Well said, exactly. But now what I want you to think about for this one, so you can see these very beautiful colors, right? And you get the sense of these things kind of cascading downwards, falling downwards.
This is in 2011.
Wow.
After 50 years.
9/11.
And what I want you to do when you stand up, I want you to come and have a look at this huge painting.
This is also by the
over
same
here.
artist.
And you can see how she's using a similar theme of these different colored dots and these strokes to kind of create this visual field that is also quite immersive, right? And really beautifully done, I have to say. I think that this one over here is really interesting, and I'd like you, maybe not necessarily now, but have a look at it, because you'll see, when you get to see it, you see these different shapes over here. But can you see as you get to the side over there, can you see how they kind of condense and compress and then release again? And that seems to me, because we're dealing with these kind of philosophical issues today, seems to be quite philosophical in the sense of it's kind of like moments when space condenses. You feel? Right? It's like when you get too close to somebody and you feel that the space condenses. And she's created this whole kind of universe of a kind of spatial, this kind of spatial universe of how we feel. How we kind of feel as we move through different kind of sensations of space.
I can see that.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Right? And then you can kind of feel...
It's like you can walk from there, it's a little bit further, and here it's so close.
And yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So she's created this kind of like, she's created this spatial universe that you can step into.
The creator of those works is one of the most renowned artists. She's a Palestinian artist named Samia Halabi. And she was born in Jerusalem. She left Jerusalem and came to Lebanon, studied at the Women's University, which is now called LAU. And and then she moved to the United States, studied in Cincinnati, and then another university, and then she studied at Yale's and taught at the Yale's University from 1978 to 1980 something for 10 years, for a decade. So she was the first female professor at Yale, and she still lives in New York in the United States.
Yeah.
And she has visited us like 2 months ago
Oh,
here.
you're kidding,
She's
really?
a very dear friend of Basil's, yes,
Wow.
and of Dr. Ramsey. And I have very high appreciation to her art, Samia Halabi. And if you sit with Samia Halabi, for her abstraction is really an observation of each and every encounter that you pass by through your daily life. She says sometimes that she might be walking by the sea or a forest or through a park or whatever, and she would look at a certain, let's say, a leaf and look into the formation of how things are built up in nature. You know, we do have some kind of a structure in nature, which is later on some people might want to dig into fractal geometry, which is another level of mathematics also. And though this is a very high level of reality in life, we think that things are chaotic, but there is some kind of structure. Looking into a daisy flower, there is some kind of a repetition, the Fibonacci proportion.
series,
yeah.
right.
So we might think that things around us in nature are so chaotic, but they are quite structured, and they were just created
and if I can,
as such.
can I actually just add to
naturally.
that? So if I can just expand on that. So you first start off, the reason that I wanted to talk about this, right? If it's just geometry, even though it's beautiful, it's not as fantastic as the other stuff we've been looking at. But the reason that I wanted to talk about it is because all of her work kind of looks like it's just geometry or just dots. But the more you begin to think about it, the more she's concerned with, just like Wafa is saying, so not only the structure that you can see, but the way that structure feels as you approach or as you get further away. It's all got to do with where I am, and how I'm feeling what I'm seeing, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, or perceiving.
Right? How I'm perceiving.
Yeah, how I'm perceiving what I'm seeing.
Not only in visual terms, but in physical, spatial terms. And these Mobius strips, interestingly enough, in a lot of psychology and psychoanalysis and sort of areas of investigation are often used. There's a famous French psychoanalyst called Jacques Lacan, who uses this to demonstrate that this difference between inside and outside, who we are as inside and outside. So in theory, it's like, oh yeah, you know, I know where my limits are, and I know what's inside, I know what's outside. But in so many of our interactions, you can't really tell what's inside and what's outside. Where are your limits? Do my limits end here, or do they end over here?
The inner self.
Right? The kind of inner self is the strange, twisting thing that's never quite stable. And I think she's really explored that beautifully over here. And I think she does a really fantastic job with that one there. Because you can kind of start off on the left and say, oh, that's great. Look, it's kind of like I'm feeling I'm walking. Everything's beautiful. I'm seeing the leaves. I'm seeing the trees. Oh, all of a sudden the space condenses, right? And it seems to twist and distort. That's the interesting thing about that side. It's not only that it condenses, but it actually seems to go, it kind of twists something like this, right? The space itself seems to go, and then you kind of push through it, and then it kind of like pops back. Not quite what it was before. That's almost like a walk.
So by using simple geometrical forms,
she arrives
such as
at these
circles, spirals, ovals, rectangles, imagine how much narrative we have built on that. This is exactly, by the way, our message is that abstraction is not as simple or as hard as we think.
Right, exactly.
Just give it a chance, look at it correctly, and try
do
to analyze
that
it,
basic.
visually analyze it.
You can also see how the basic step is that basic description. It all starts from there. If you don't do that, you're setting off on the wrong path. Not necessarily the wrong path, but you're setting off on a path that doesn't allow you to get back to what the basic structure is, right? So be careful. And I often say this. If you come and see art with me at a museum, the one thing you're not allowed to do is look at the title. You're not allowed to look at the title.
I'm happy everything
You're not
is
allowed to look
untitled,
at the
yeah.
artist, precisely because as soon as you do that, it's like you're locked in. And you can't see anything else, right? So try that, right? Resist going to look at the label on the side of the painting. Yeah, never read the wall, absolutely. See the work and then read the wall if you want to. And then you'll be surprised how often you'll say, it's like, no, that's all wrong, right? No, yeah, that's not, that's, you know, it just doesn't quite work. That's not how I was seeing it. Yeah,
no, but you have like a pattern, like one good, one bad. Where's the bad? Of Sasha?
Yeah, well,
these four are really good.
Yeah, well, they're really good. Some of them will engage you differently,
exactly.
Right? So it takes more work to engage with these ones,
exactly.
Right? I mean, they're beautiful because it's too geometric. Whereas that one over there, when I first saw it, immediately it was like, ooh, I could kind of feel the condensation of the space. You know, it's really kind of physiological in a sense. Absolutely.
It's actually one thing that when I teach art for my students, the first thing I teach them is how to simplify things in front of them, so that they are able to draw it.
Right.
So if I have a vase in front of me,
yeah.
How many shapes I can put in that shape?
Yeah.
That consistent shape.
Right.
So like just a circle and a rectangle, you have the shape. So all of it.
She's working in that same mode, right?
Exactly.
But then but the other thing is Wafa is saying, starting off with these simple forms. The interesting thing about simplicity is how quickly it becomes complicated.
Yep.
Right? 2 sentences and you're in this whole chaotic world, right?
Muhammad, I'll give you a book that she has written, and it's called Shapes and Colors. I'm going to show it to you, and this is how she starts, by the way. She starts scribbling like shapes, circles, triangles.
And she used the computer.
She
has been doing that recently.
She's in her late 80s, nearing 90s, yeah, and she's super, like, very aware and.
Da Vinci says simplicity is the ultimate sophistication.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
This is
that's what it's
perfect representation.
Or is it the print?
Which one?
The bigger one.
The big one? I'm not sure if it's oil. It might be acrylic, but it's not print. It's not a print. It's definitely Wafa will know.
هيدولي oil.
It's oil.
هونيك اللي هيديك اكريليك وهيدي اكريليك بس هيدول
And these
اثنين
ones
oil.
are oil.
Those are oil on canvas.
I'm thinking about her. أي نوع أكريليك بتستعمل؟
نعم؟
بفكر بأي نوع أكريليك بتستعمل.
مراتك مش معرفني.
لا بس لما the quality of it is like opaque, but at the same time it has like super.
Yeah, it glows as well. Yeah. You know, I'm just going
She's
off on a
very
complete...
careful about her material.
On a complete...
Super meticulous.
Tangent.
Super meticulous.
You know, I lived in Australia for several years, and there's a style of...
Aboriginal art?
There's a style of Aboriginal art called dot painting, which, you know, it does different kinds of things, but it really works with a series of dots to create this whole universe that's really quite extraordinary. It wouldn't surprise me if she'd seen that, I have to say.
Another thing, like this is an information that was circulated. She's also a very much a fan of Claude Monet. And we could see that as an expansion of what we used to see in Impressionistic
as the Impressionist
work,
dots,
with a very
the small,
smooth,
bright, colorful
brushstrokes.
brushstrokes. Yeah.
But she takes it to a very large,
to a whole different
scale. Different scale. Now, this is a very large scale painting, which invites you not only to look at it from afar, but even imagine yourself you're in it. But what I like about the artworks that are here, and they are really highly rich in abstraction, is that they really tackle the complete simplicity and distilled thought of simple shapes and the importance of color and composition and texture and materiality that we somehow just dismiss when we look at a piece of art.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Good. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rico.
Yes, thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Wafa. Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you, Lael.